Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, it is a joy to be with you. And as we talk about the popular vote, the Electoral College, the New York governor said as they were counting the Electoral College votes, it's time for us to end this. Wow. What do you think about that? I've told you we need to have this conversation, not just in the run up to the election. We've got to push the conversation if you want to end the Electoral College, or maybe some of you feel that it's still a viable institution. You let me know what you think. Please reach out to me here on Blue Sky at santitajackson.bsky.social or X, which is the Santita Jackson Show, but really go to at Santita J, and of course the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, and over here on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. So everybody, please meet me there. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about several other topics as we go forward. I'm going to be on the air with you for 4 hours today, and I'm really glad about it. But I'm glad that we're going to start here because when I came across this story, I said, you know what? I promised during this campaign that we would continue to work with the National Popular Vote to push this issue. Far too often we push these issues in the heat of the campaign and then we let them drop. And it just seems that it becomes very partisan. And really, this is really about patriotism. This is about how we really believe that the country ought to work, really. But this is what happened as they were counting down the votes, because of course the electoral colleges are in each state and they're overseen by the governor. And so she was counting up New York State's votes. She said, the Electoral College does not contribute to the overriding objectives set forth in our great Constitution, we the people, forming a more perfect union. And I strongly believe that the people of New York State and the United States of America should and must have their votes count equally, and that the popular vote should prevail. It's time to amend the Constitution and relegate the institution of the Electoral College to the history books. Remember, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 2.9 million persons. Think about that. Think about that, everybody. Think about just how close this race was. Well, so let's talk about this. I want to hear from you. And please reach out to me, Carol Soskin, my sister from another Mr. Happy Hanukkah to you, my sister. And Jewel up there in New York. Yeah, your governor kind of opened everything up. And so I reached out to National Popular Vote and I said, well, I got no one better than their strategist and Democratic Party consultant, Alyssa Cass. I'm so excited that you are with us because I've had libertarians on the show to talk about it, Republicans to talk about it. It seems that this is an issue, the national popular vote, really reigning supreme, the ending of the Electoral College. It's something that many Americans, whatever your party or ideological affiliation is, this is what Americans want. So tell me, what did you make of what the governor said first?
I was thrilled to see. I wasn't too surprised because New York is actually one of 17 states or 18 jurisdictions that's actually a signer to the National Popular Vote bill. So Governor Hochul, while I was thrilled to see her voice her support for moving away from the current system, it's consistent with where voters are in our state because we were one of the original states to pass the National Popular Vote bill. And I also think what the governor is saying, it recognizes sort of the moment that we find ourselves in as New Yorkers, of which I'm one, and as a country. I think no matter your political stripes, if you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, or an independent, one thing that we can all agree on is that the current system isn't great. And you saw that reflected in the tone and tenor of our discourse. People are frustrated. They feel that politics isn't working for them, that the current system feels corrupt or only catering to the well-connected few.
Mhm.
And that isn't surprising that people feel that way because of the Electoral College, it is in fact the case that is in fact the case. You know, under the current system, the presidential election is decided by voters in a handful of battleground states, while the votes of 4 out of 5 Americans who live in safely blue or safely red states are essentially irrelevant. So when voters tell us, I don't feel that the current system is being responsive to me, that isn't just a feeling, that's an actuality. Because for 4 out of 5 Americans, your vote just doesn't matter.
Well, Alyssa, stop right there because I need you to
Mhm.
explain that to people. Because as Americans, as we come together, I think should talk about this, and I think that we should, and we should do it in
Mhm.
2025, 2026, 2027, and then 2028. How is it that so many Americans are excluded? How does that work?
Yeah, so while everyone gets to vote, it's about who's competing for your vote and whether your vote impacts, right, how the Electoral College plays out. So let's take this past presidential election cycle. You saw over 90%, right? So close to 93% of all events that Donald Trump held or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden held were only in 7 swing states.
Yeah.
Because really, their path to victory for any presidential candidate only runs through those 7 states. And those are the battleground states that we hear so much about. And why are they a battleground state? They're a battleground state because there are perhaps, because they're competitive from a partisan perspective. There are relatively even numbers of Republicans, of independents, and Democrats. So those are up for grabs. So all of the money that's spent in elections, all of the campaigning that presidential candidates do is only done in 7 states. And this cycle was the worst cycle to date, where of all the money that was spent, all of the campaign events that were held, 95 or 93% of the time were in one of those battleground states. So for everyone else, if you feel like, when candidates have to compete for our votes, are showing up, meeting voters, talking to voters, hearing what they have to say, that's good for our democracy. That's good for our elections. And it's good for our sense of we want to be heard, right?
Mhm.
I think America sent a big message, across the country that they felt that that political candidates aren't hearing them, aren't competing for their votes. And the fact of the matter is that they aren't. But the good news is, or I think is good news, is that there's actually an achievable plan to change this. And that's the National Popular Vote Plan. And I'd love to talk a little bit about what that is and how we can get it done.
Yes, because I'd like to know what the National Popular Vote Plan is, because you did say that New York is one of the states that has signed on to it, and in a time when there's always a tension between federal power and state power, and this is when you see states really do have much more power than we even know. So much of our politics are focused on Washington, but the governor and your state legislators, they send everybody to Washington. So talk to me. What is the National Popular Vote effort, and how is it that states can sign on to it and essentially trump what happens,
Sure.
with this Electoral College?
So the National Popular Vote Plan is an agreement among states to award their electoral votes to the presidential candidate who receives the most popular votes in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, regardless of their own state's results, ensuring that no president will take office without winning the popular vote nationwide. The compact takes effect when states possessing 270 electoral votes, which is the amount needed to elect a president in the Electoral College, adopt it. And to date, 17 states and the District of Columbia have already passed the national popular vote bill. So that puts us, so this isn't some pipe dream. It's not a academic fever dream. This is a really achievable plan that we're well on our way. We're in the fourth quarter of being able to pass this thing. And once we get to 270 votes, and we're already at 200, so the states that have already signed to the compact, including New York, have 209 of the 270 electoral votes needed to activate the law.
Really?
And so, yes, so we're well on our way. And those are big states, small states, medium states. And I should note that in every state where this has been passed, it's been done with bipartisan support. Both Democrats and Republicans and independents support the national popular vote bill. And this shouldn't be surprising. You know, a recent Pew survey actually showed that nearly 2/3 of US adults, 65%, say that the way the president is elected should be changed so that the winner of the popular vote nationwide wins the presidency. So, and that includes 63% of non-MAGA Republicans, 82% of Democrats. And this support is all ages. In fact, 70% of voters ages 18 to 29 support this change. And I know it seems a little wonky, right? The National Popular Vote is actually, the full name is the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Interstate compacts are really common, and I bet that many of your listeners have actually participated in one. If you've ever bought a Powerball ticket, that's an interstate compact. And so again, how would this go into effect? We have to we're at 209 of the 270 electoral votes needed to activate the law. And I should note that the bill has been passed in one of the two legislative chambers in an additional 7 states with 74 electoral votes. So if we were able to get this over the finish line in just the states where it's already under consideration, where it's already been passed in one of the 2 chambers of their legislature, we could have a national popular vote next election. In fact, I think that 2024 might be the last election where the president is selected under the current system and not through a popular vote.
We're talking with Alyssa Cass, strategist for the National Popular Vote campaign. Do you know about it? Do you know what it means? Has it been activated in your state? Because Alyssa Cass, we have people listening from all over the country, and we want you to get involved. Reach out to your state legislators. Ask them if they have signed on. Ask them if they know about it. Some people might not. You know, a lot of people don't know about this, but we all should. Do you think, how would it work, say in 2028?
Sure.
If we're up to 270 votes, you know, states that hold 270 votes in the Electoral College, because it's interesting that using the Electoral College math, we're well on our way to this.
Yeah. Yes.
How would that work? I mean,
sure.
You know, people are voting, they're counting up, you know, you're watching them with their digital boards on TV, and what would happen? How would that
work? So just to take a step back of why the National Popular Vote Bill is able to work the way it does, is that the Constitution lets states decide how their electors cast their vote. So right now you have state like Governor Hochul made those comments while the electors in New York were casting their votes. Mm-hmm. So they voted in New York, or just as when those electors met in New York, it's just as they meet in Illinois or in Arkansas or in Louisiana. They're now voting for whoever won the vote in just their state, right? Where, you know, that's who they cast their electoral votes for. If the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact goes into effect, all of those participating states' electors would not cast their vote for the winner of just their state, but for the winner of the national of the vote overall across the nation. So whoever gets the more votes, nationwide, those states participating in the compact would cast their electoral votes for that. This is really returning to a very fundamental principle of one person, one vote.
So do you think that this might inspire more Americans to vote?
I do. Right now, or just as you look at, I do think so. Because when Americans are engaged with and are spoken to directly and are told that they matter in the process, Americans show up. I think you see that turnout in places like Michigan or Arizona or North Carolina was much higher than it was in a state that wasn't competitive at the presidential level, like my home state of New York. New York had a lower participation, significantly lower than any of the battleground states. So yes, I think that this is the biggest change I can think of, that one is constitutional, two, that is already well on its way to being a reality, and three, would bring every single American actively in to the presidential campaign process. Now it could no longer be the case that presidential candidates could sort of ignore most of the country, right? They're not competing for votes they're not competing for the votes of most Americans in this country. And it shows. This would force presidential candidates to compete for every single American's vote, no matter where they live, no matter if they live in a big state or a small state, in a big city or a small one. It puts every single American on an equal playing field. I can't think of at a moment when Americans feel pretty down on the state of our democracy, pretty skeptical, if not angry. This is a way to say, hey, we're thinking of you, we hear you, and we're going to be talking to you. Engagement is the best way, is the best thing we have to recommit people to our American democratic experiment. And so this is a surefire way to bring everyone back into the fold.
And I'm sure it would change our politics.
Yes.
Just the issues, because I think Americans are much more of a mix than corporate media projects.
I think that's true.
And so I'm wondering, okay, wait a minute, if you can't just, you would have to talk about all issues everywhere.
Yes. And you'd have to talk about the issues, right, that nationally people were saying was most important to them, right? Like in this, there was, or let's take this past election, right? Americans or anytime you go to the grocery store, anytime I go to the grocery store, I have to buy eggs and they're $9, $10. Like, I'm pissed off. Like the cost of living, I think, how expensive it is to just get through your day or get through your month, right? How precarious that makes so many of us feel, right? That's the number one issue, I think, on most people's minds, right?
For everybody.
For everyone. And was that what you heard either candidate talking about the majority of the time? You didn't. Because they were so it's forcing, like, the conversation that people are having in their living rooms all across this country will be elevated to the presidential level.
Melissa Cass, national popular vote. What can people do? I mean, if you have to if you could break it down for people to make an argument to other Americans, why the national popular vote is something that they should be looking at, why it's achievable, and what it is that they can do. Let's start with, why do we need the national popular vote in 2024?
In 2028, we need a national popular vote in 2028 because
I think we needed it now. Because
yes, we sort of,
it's becoming more and more contentious, right? It's just our politics is getting.
Look, because I think you can see too, right? Because here's what happened when There's nothing, because I think our democratic experiment, like I think we Americans often take for granted that the democracy system of checks and balances are that's just a given, that they're never under threat, and that just isn't the case. For people to believe in democracy, they have to believe democracy is working for them. And when they know that when their vote for the highest office in the land doesn't matter unless they happen to live in one of 7 swing states, that's really hard to get people to believe in the American project, commit to it, and fight for it. Because right now, the American project at the presidential level is cut off to 4 and 5 Americans. Mm-hmm. So, and you see this when you have numbers. Listen, like, on so many issues, Americans can feel really divided. But when you have 65-70% of the country saying, we don't like this Electoral College, we want something new, that's a change we should all get behind. Or when I look at, or actually looking ahead, the place where we see the types of Americans who are most dissatisfied with the current system, who are most disgusted by politics, are young people. And so when you have 70% of young people saying, I want a national popular vote, that's a change we should do. And the best changes in politics are ones that just make sense to people. One person, one vote, I think makes sense. Makes sense to me, I think makes sense to you, and I think probably makes sense to most of your listeners. We should get behind changes in politics that are rational, right? Like that you could explain to a kindergartner. I couldn't explain the Electoral College to a kindergartner. It should be that my vote matters, or is just as important, or is just as fought after as my neighbor or as someone across the country. And instead, the current system picks which Americans matters more, whose votes they're going to compete for, whose priorities they're going to champion. And that just doesn't feel fair. Americans are sick and tired of a system that often feels rigged or set up just for the few. This is a system that can be for all of us.
What about just moving forward?
Yeah.
How do we, between now and 2028, what do we do? Because we're at 200, I'm very pleasantly surprised, because it's something that I support, quite frankly. I think it would surprise people if you said, there are 270 votes that a president needs to win in the Electoral College or national popular vote. They have 209 of them. I think that Americans would say, you get a double take.
I know. Here's what. So what can we do, right? What gets the national popular vote compact over the finish line? Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, the national popular vote bill has passed in one legislative chamber in an additional 7 states that represent 74 electoral votes. If you live in one of those states, and I'll tell you what they are. If you live in one of those states, you should be writing your state lawmaker, writing your governor saying, pass this bill, sign it into law, because that will get every American a national popular vote. Those states are Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Oklahoma, Virginia, and Arizona, and Arkansas. If you're in one of those 7 states, pick up the phone, pick up your cell phone, get on your computer, email, call, write a letter to your state lawmaker and your governor and say, this is what I want you to prioritize. All of these state legislative bodies across the country are going to be back in session in January. Make it so that when they get back from Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa break, that they have emails from you saying, I want a national popular vote, so we can get this over the finish line and make a national popular vote that brings back the principle of one person, one vote over the finish line.
As we look to get this national popular vote compact over the finish line, I'm struck by Arizona, North Carolina. These are swing states, very competitive states. What Are you getting pushback from them, or does something else need to happen in the campaign?
Uh, um, anytime we talk to state lawmakers about this or regular Americans, they support it. This is one of the few things that is good policy, good politics. What the really only sort of the biggest barrier is just people not knowing this is an option, right? People not knowing. Anytime someone hears about this, they say that makes sense. I support it. So we need more Americans who know about it, support it, and call in and make a fuss about it to their state lawmakers and governors.
If people are pushing back, what might be the justification now? Because because it seems, what did Dick Durbin, when we had the banking crisis, the Wall Street crisis in 2008, he said, look, in exasperation, he said, look, the bankers run the place. And I'm just trying to figure out who would push back against the national popular vote in the United States of America in 2024.
Very few. Oh, sorry. Very few people. In fact, very few. That's why a vast majority of the country supports it. It's just a matter of making this a priority for state lawmakers who do, in fact, they've got a lot to do, a lot on their plates. We need to make this a priority. The health of our elections, the health of our democracy should be second to nothing, and it makes our whole system function better.
And so, to be clear, we don't need a constitutional amendment.
We do not need a constitutional amendment. We need to pass the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact and get an additional. So all we have to do is get states to sign, who represent an additional 61 electoral votes. Not that many. Again, as I said, we're in the fourth quarter of this game to sign on to the National Popular Vote bill.
I didn't realize we were so close.
Yes, and you can get all the information if you go to nationalpopularvote.com. We have really easy ways for you to reach out to your lawmakers, language you can use, letters you can send. We make it very easy. So go to nationalpopularvote.com. Just
really quickly, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that it is a transpartisan issue. Do Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, do they see this differently? Are there different paths to the support for the National Popular Vote Compact?
Listen, sure, I think that there are different paths based on different states, but as I said, in every state we've passed this with bipartisan support. The most recent state to join the compact is Maine. It had a Republican sponsor, a Democratic sponsor. Maine has gone both ways in presidential elections. They have split congressional districts. It's a state that, isn't strongly one way or the other from a partisan perspective, and they joined. And, just as Governor Hochul voiced her support for a national popular vote bill, just last week, Donald Trump said we should move to a national popular vote. So there is support for this from Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
What do you think pushed him, or not pushed him? What do you think made him express that opinion?
I'm a Democrat. I won't speculate on because I think it makes sense to people. It makes sense. The current system doesn't make sense. It was designed at a different time for different things. This is the reason anyone would support it is that it's good. It makes good sense. It's good policy, good politics, and it's overwhelmingly popular with voters. Politicians that want to, this is, I can't think of any reason, in my job, I spend a lot of time advising politicians. This is a smart politics play.
Well, just as you go, what do we do now? Because you only need 61 more votes, and you said there's several you named states that are the holdouts, the key.
If you live in Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Oklahoma, Virginia, or Arkansas, go to nationalpopularvote.com, send an email today to your state lawmaker and your governor, or give them a call.
All right.
Because with that support, we can make sure that in 2028, we have one person, one vote, and a national popular vote election for president in 2028.
Alyssa Cass, I just want to thank you so much, because I have to tell you, I did not realize that we were this close to getting the national popular vote, and to get it to really, really matter. I mean, to get it to really activate it. And I'm wondering, I'm hoping that no one would push back once it comes through.
Yeah. We hope that our movement is large, it's broad, and it's big. I work with Democrats, Republicans, and independents on it. So please join us at nationalpopularvote.com.
Nationalpopularvote.com. Alyssa Cass, thank you so much. Brilliant strategy.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you.
Thank you. Hey, everybody, let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think that we need a national popular vote now? I do. I think it is time. You do know that this was established really to support slavery. It was a compromise that was struck because many of the slave states didn't have enough people to balance everything out. So much in American life has been predicated upon slavery, everybody. So much. And so now you've got the governor of New York, a state that has signed on to this National Popular Vote Compact. She announces as the Electoral College, over which she was presiding a couple of days ago, she said, it's time for us to end it. Do you think that we have now reached critical mass? Let me know what you think. Have we reached critical mass? Do you think that in the next 4 years, we could possibly see an end to the Electoral College and the beginning of the national popular vote? How would that shape America? How would that reshape America? Do you think that more and more Americans would get involved and vote? You let me know. Let me know. You don't. Mike, let me know what you think. Please let me know what you think. Let me know. Get on over here and let me know what you think. Hey, Carol, how you doing, Jewel? Do you think that it's time for us to end the Electoral College? It is really a vestige of slavery. This is something that people really don't want to talk about. And it's so interesting that which is rooted and grounded in slavery, so many people don't want to talk about. In America, we really don't want to talk about it. And we tend to have politicians, Black politicians, who are elevated to the presidency and the vice presidency, who are not directly connected to it. Now, to be fair, President Barack Obama, as he said, look, my relatives actually were connected on the slave owning side. Kamala Harris acknowledges, look, we came over here on the same colonial project. Am I Jamaican American? Yes. But the same colonial project that bedeviled my brothers and sisters and my forebears in Jamaica and my forebears in India, well, I relate to it. So everybody kind of comes at this from their own space. But this comes from the Black American narrative. The Black American narrative. So much of the freedom struggle in America comes from that. So what do you think? Do you think it's time for us to end the Electoral College? Let me know what you think. Jewel, what say you? Shapiro, what say you? Now, Dave, you say award electoral votes for every 100,000 plurality in the popular vote. But how would that work? Cameron Barnes, you are a young gun. I know you. Very, very, very responsible young man and doing a lot of great things in the community in Chicago. He says it is time for the Electoral College to go. Why do you say that? And Mike, you say that we need to go to a Black party. But what would that do? I mean, because at the end of the day, what we have to do is decide whether we are going to be a democracy or a republic. See, America is a republic that has democratic aspects. It has democratic leanings. You see it expressed in this way. With the republic, You have an electoral college. You have a break between. You have something that a mechanism that is a check on the popular vote. So it's not one man, one vote. Sure, one man and one woman gets a vote, but then there is a council that oversees them. That's republicanism, to to put it rather crudely. But when you have a democracy, it's just one person, one vote. That's a democracy. How could I put it? The U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is called the People's House. So if a member resigns, vacates their seat for any reason, if they pass, there has to be an election. That is the only way that a House of Representatives seat can be gained. Not so with the U.S. the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate is like the House of Lords in England. You can be appointed there. It is truly the upper class chamber. Yeah, they call it the most exclusive club in the world. 100 men and women represent about 350 million persons. If any U.S. senator loses their seat, or if they pass away, or if they vacate the seat for any reason, the governor of the state then gets the opportunity to appoint. That's the Republican aspects of our government. So the question is, in 2024, moving toward 2028, what kind of government do you want? Do you want a democracy? Or do you want a republic that has democratic elements? And I tell you what, if you want a democracy, what you're going to have to do is get involved, everybody. The only way that you can preserve this, the only way that we can preserve the republic and not go back to a constitutional monarchy, the only way we can preserve this constitutional republic is for everybody to get involved. You got to get registered to vote. And I'm going to tell you, I want people to get registered to vote, and whatever party you register for is fine with me. Honest to God, it is fine with me. Because to me, the most important thing is for us to get involved and vote. And vote the way you really believe that the country ought to be governed, or your city, or your state, or your county. Then we get an accurate reflection of where Americans are. And we can work it out from there. But if you do not get involved, if you do not vote, well, other people take over. Haven't you seen what has happened with Elon Musk today? The Democrats and Republicans in the House of Representatives had worked out a budget. Because, see, we're about to run out of money. We're in the midst of a funding fight. The government is on the brink of a shutdown. The Democrats and Republicans had come together, and they had crafted a bipartisan deal. Well, Elon Musk walked in, and of course, he's part of the president's economic task force, to put it, just the way it works. They're overseeing government waste, and he and Vivek Ramaswamy, ostensibly, and this council of the oligarchs have a check on our money. So they are essentially overriding our elected representatives. It is Elon Musk who killed that bipartisan deal. And we're watching our votes get thrown out left and right. It's not just the Republicans, everybody. The Democrats did it in the spring when they said that they were not going to have a primary. Don't ever forget that. And yet we faithfully went to the polls, 14 million strong, and voted for Joe Biden. Some of us against our better judgment because we felt that he was struggling. And we didn't feel that he was a strong candidate. Yes, you can continue to say that you're the only one who beat Donald Trump. Well, that was 4 years ago. Today, he did not look strong. Well, then a Hollywood star writes a letter, and then this whole hornet's nest, well, of course, after his A very, very disappointing debate performance. A whole hornet's nest is stirred up. And George Clooney writes a letter. Then you're hearing Nancy Pelosi and former Speaker Pelosi and former President Obama say, you know what, we need to have a convention, a mini convention, and come up with a candidate. All of it's still very undemocratic because we're still not voting. But it was better than just Joe Biden just sliding Kamala Harris in. It was unfair to her. And many people are now saying, the reports are coming out, that maybe he did that out of spite, because many people felt that she was not seasoned enough, that she was not strong enough as a candidate. And so here we are. And so now, later on today, we will be discussing what her future is in politics. If she runs for governor of California, people are saying that that is it for her. And yet she's saying that, you know, I'm sure if I could get a do-over, I know how I would run for president in 2028. So she's caught between the horns of that dilemma. And that's something that she'll have to work through. And we'll talk about that later on in the show. But I want to know from you, or should I say, I want to say that it's important that we be involved in the process, because we've seen what happens. We get thrown out of the process. Democrats were thrown out of the process. The people who voted uncommitted were not allowed on the stage at the Democratic convention itself. The Democratic convention had seminars during the day, like a super convention, and the Palestinians got on the stage there, which is a huge, huge win. I mean, 40 years ago, you couldn't even call them by name. You called them the P word, and we had to push for that. But then they had the Israeli hostages on the stage, and it was important for them to be heard from because they still aren't home. They need to be at home. Those Israelis need to be freed. That having been said, by that point, 200,000 Palestinians had been killed, and they didn't get a voice. That's what happens when the democracy is not working. You're not being represented. That's why you need the national popular vote. But you can only get the national popular vote if you vote about it. If you tell the people who represent you in your state that you want them to sign on to this compact, an interstate compact, that is a compact amongst the states that will say, look, we're the ones who are going to decide who is the president. Otherwise, we're putting it in other people's hands. As I was saying just a few minutes ago, look at Elon Musk. He said that this budget will not work, and so it has been thrown out. And so if the government shuts down even for a little while, people's SNAP benefits, well, they'll be in the balance. Social Security checks, they'll be in the balance. A lot of things will be in the balance, I guess, until he decides, and he and this council of oligarchs decide to release our money. Now, as they are combing the government, combing through the records, combing through the budgets, looking for waste, I bet you one part of the budget will not be touched, and that would be the military, which is where Elon Musk's, the place from which he derives so much of his wealth. And I really wish they'd be straight with us about what's really, 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 really going on. Are all of these oligarchs there? Maybe they're there because we don't have any money. Think about that. How much money can we spend on these wars and still be solvent? How much money can Wall Street take out of the country and put offshore and have us still be solvent? I don't know how that works. As they say, the math ain't mathin'. So I want to know from you, what are your thoughts? Mike, you say we need more political parties. I think that you're right. But if you want more political parties, guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to vote about it. You're going to have to vote about it. You can't Not you, Mike, but we can't just say that this is what we want. We have to be active. If we're not active in the system is activated on us. What do they say? If you don't have a seat at the table, then you look at that menu. That's where you are. Either you're on the plate or you have a seat. Not either you have a plate or you have a seat. You're on the plate. You're on the menu. We have to make some decisions real fast about what it is that we need, not just who we want, but what we need. So now, with President Trump signing on, and look, I'm not going to automatically, reflexively disagree with things that he does. That's not how this is going to work. I don't have the patience to be out of power for 4 years. And we don't have that kind of time. By 2050, Black families are projected to have $0 in wealth. We have got to work with all those in power so we can get what we need. We need our banks. We need our businesses indemnified. That's what we need. We need the Small Business Association. I mean, we need all of these things. We need our Black colleges funded. We need these things. And I'm not willing to wait 4 years so that I can negotiate with someone I voted for. Don't ever do that. No, 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 no. I will vote for you, not because I like you, but because you're going to deliver for me. And I expect you to pass a George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, if not through the Congress, by executive order, and let it last 4 years. That's what I expect you to do. I expect you to reinforce my voting rights. If you can't get it through the Congress, then I expect an executive order. We should have learned something from these past 4 years. I don't care who you want, always get what you need. That's the thing. That's the thing. Get what you need. You might not get who you want, and you then again might get who you want. But if you don't get what you need, you've lost. Our victories cannot merely be cosmetic victories. They have to be substantive victories. We need right now to have one person, one vote. It's going to be a game changer for our young people. Our young people absolutely want it, and I think they are going to get it. We might as well leave that to them as part of our gift to them, as their legacy, because they really want a different kind of world than the one that we have lived in. And they deserve that. So let's get to it, everybody. The nationalpopularvote.com. Call your state legislators and let them know that you want them to vote on it. Let them know. Let me see what you're saying, Cynthia. You say it doesn't matter who went up against Trump. Elon Musk said the election process is easy to manipulate and rig. That's right. That's why Trump was dancing on stage. He knew the robot man managed to rig the election, saying VP Kamala Harris wasn't seasoned enough. Is so terribly ridiculous compared to who Trump is, who is a maniac. The people will be sorry when Trump implements Project 2025. Who's going to stop him? But Cynthia, there's one problem with that. Project 2025 was implemented under the Biden administration in 2022. Trump is not a maniac. He might do things with which you and I disagree, and his style might not be the style that I like. But he's not a maniac. And so let us not buy this corporate media line. I don't know why they don't like him after having stood up for him, but they don't. I don't understand that. I know that there's something to it. And in time, that will be revealed. The elections can be rigged, and Democrats and Republicans have rigged them down through the years. I mean, it is a legend what happened with John F. Kennedy and the election of 1960. They had to come through Chicago through a Democratic mayor who had Chicago locked down block by block. That's the Democratic machine. Literally, precinct captains ruled you had block captains in Chicago. So every house, every apartment had a vote that could be guaranteed to the Democratic Party. That's just how it has rolled here. So rigging the vote, I don't think that's what happened here. I think what happened was I think that the vice president was given 107 days plus to run an election that people generally run for 4 years, 2 years, 1 year. She struggled in 2019. You remember that. But she was given no time. And she was shoved onto the stage. And she didn't really have the support of the higher ups in the party. Let's keep it 100. I'm going to reach out to Toure. You've seen him on MSNBC down through the years. And he's done some excellent reporting. And now a lot of different people are reporting on all the folks who did not want Kamala Harris. Michael Dyson, Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, has talked about Obama waiting and his wife waiting a week to come out and endorse her. So she had a lot of internal fights. She had a lot of internal fights. You had a lot of people who did not want her on that ticket. And so when you look at the votes that she was able to accrue, when you look at the campaign that she ran with Biden's people, who called her basically, they said basically she was a replacement candidate. They didn't really like her either. Can you imagine running with all of these people who really don't feel that you need to be there? That's what happened with her. And we need to be honest about that. That's not something that Trump did. That happened within the Democratic House. That happened in our house. So you need to be asking the people who are already there, the people, the establishment, the Democratic establishment, what they did to her. So now the election has been settled. The Electoral College has voted. The people have voted. So now what are we going to do? Where do we go from here? Our HBCUs on the black side, they need to be indemnified. We need our black banks back. You know, our immigrant brothers and sisters need a pathway to citizenship. We need to stop meddling in Venezuela and the Congo and all these other places so people can stop running away from home and they can stay in Haiti where they want to be. We're running people out of their own homes. That's what we're doing. So that we can't cry for 4 years. We don't have that kind of time. We have to figure out what it is that we need, even though we do not have who we want, so that we can get what it is that we need and so that we can get what it is that we want. That's it. That's how politics works. That's really it. And no one's going to give us anything, Cynthia. You said Trump is not giving black people anything. Biden didn't pass those rights. Trump certainly won't do. We don't know what Trump is going to do. I tell you what, though, I'm going to try and I'm going to push. I'm going to try and I'm going to push. That's what we have to do. No matter what, you have to keep trying. You have to keep pushing. I don't care who is in office. Get over who's in office. Because that's really, they're not even the point. The point is we must push. All of these other ethnic groups, religious groups, no matter who is in office, they always have a say because they have people on both sides of the political divide and on the third front as well. We have to do that too. It's not personal. Stop romancing the Democratic Party. Stop it. Stop romancing the Republican Party. They're not entities with whom and with which you should fall in love. They should be falling in line with you. So let's get this national popular vote. I think it would make more and more Americans vote because more and more Americans would say, you know what, I matter. I matter. I truly, truly matter. Some people who I do not know cannot gather in my state capitol and vote, and they're not even tied to me. How about that? Think about it. So coming up, let's talk about the post office. So much of the pathway to the middle class is by way of the National Post Office. What will happen if the U.S. Postal Service what will happen if they are privatized? that would be absolutely fatal for the Black middle class. Think about that. When we look at privatization, it's been a mess. It's been a mess. And it's privatizing our money. Do you want that? Let's talk about that here on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute.